Dragon Ball, Goku, 9 other immature anime adults. While it's not always a bad thing for these adults to act childishly, there are times when anime characters act more immaturely than actual kids. With time comes age, and with age comes wisdom, at least that's how it usually works. While time and life experiences do lead the way to maturity more often than not everyone decides to mature. Some decide to stay just as immature in their adulthood as they were in their childhood. The same goes for anime as it does in real life, with some characters growing up but never truly growing up. One of the best examples being Goku from Dragon Ball. While it's not always a bad thing for these adults to act childishly, there are times when these characters act more immaturely than actual kids, sometimes their own. 10. Goku has definitely remained a child at heart. Dragon Ball. As the Dragon Ball franchise evolved over the years, so did Goku, who went from being a strange monkey-tailed child to being one of the most powerful warriors in not just his universe, but multiple others. On the outside, he's definitely aged, but on the inside, Goku is still pretty naive, simple, and sometimes overly excited. While Goku's immaturity is part of his charm, there's no doubt that it's gotten himself and others into trouble more than once. Despite being a married adult with 2 sons and a granddaughter, Goku is pretty much that same kid Bulma found in the wilderness all those years ago. 9. Kyosuke is an immature, deadbeat Horimiya. Sometimes the apple does actually fall pretty far from the tree, at least it does in the case of Kyoko Hori and her father Kyosuke from Horimiya. Despite being both Kyoko and Soda's father, Kyosuke is more of a kid than both of them put together. He's rude, overly easygoing, and has a habit of trying to push people's buttons. Kyosuke's also known to leave home for long stretches of time, supposedly for work, though the way he does it, it's closer to being a deadbeat. Because of this, Kyoko had to mature pretty early in life and doesn't see Kyosuke as her father. 8. Shingen, an eccentric childish Dr. Durarara. To be fair, anyone as weird and eccentric as Shinra Kishitani from Durarara would have had to have had an equally strange or stranger parent. And Shingen definitely fits the bill. Much like his son, this gas mask-wearing doctor is obsessed with the supernatural and will take any chance in order to study it, all with childlike glee. Despite being the main reason behind Kelty's predicament, Shingen spends a lot of time messing around and even jokingly insists on Kelty calling him father. He's also got an overly dramatic side, which he ropes his assistants into as well. 7. Dazai has a constant need to mess with people. Bungo Stray Dogs. Bungo Stray Dogs Osamu Dazai is one of the most brilliant minds in the entire series, however, that wouldn't be immediately obvious to anyone upon first glance. While Dazai is capable of getting serious and flexing both his mind and his special ability, no long human, he spends a good amount of time acting immaturely. On top of Dazai's silly and morbid fascination with suicide, he also likes to mess around and pull pranks on his co-workers at the Armed Detective Agency, especially the uptight, no-nonsense personality that is Kanikida. 6. Joseph Joestar is bizarrely over-the-top. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Across the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure series, the Joestar family has seen and been many crazy things, though few Joestars have aged alongside a good portion of the series the way that Joseph, the second JoJo, did. In his initial appearance, Joseph carried himself with a lot of self-confidence, aggression, and playfulness, and while he did relax a little by part 3, his more childish side was still very much present. While he did lose some of that temper, he was still pretty impatient and would become more over the top when it came to being surprised. He even still jokes around at bad times, like when he almost made Jotaro believe that Dio possessed his body. 5. Jintoki is lazy, mostly just goofs off Gintama. Jintoki Sakata from Gintama was a former samurai, feared as Shiroyasha during the Jui War due to his skills and intimidating appearance. Though it could be hard to believe any of that when looking at Jintoki after the war. Jintoki is still a highly skilled swordsman, but it's underneath mountains of laziness and immaturity. Despite running a business of odd jobs, Jintoki doesn't feel any level of motivation to make his living and would rather lie around, read manga, or gamble what little he has on pachinko. Jintoki can get serious if he has to, though looking at his goofier side, it's almost hard to believe he was so feared once. 4. Gojo takes almost nothing seriously. Jujutsu Kaisen. With impossible levels of power and a blindfold that gives him an air of mystery, Jujutsu Kaisen Satoru Gojo makes quite an impression. Being a teacher at Jujutsu High, one would assume that Gojo would be setting a mature example for his students, though that's not exactly his style. Because of his strength, Gojo is very confident. And because of that, he's pretty easygoing and often pretty nonchalant even in the most serious of circumstances. While he can put on a mature attitude, Gojo is more likely to act as immaturely as his students. Getting in on their pranks or other gags that he'll gladly pull on other jujitsu sorcerers like Nanami. 3. Naruto hasn't completely grown up. Naruto/Boruto. In his academy days, Naruto was pretty much the class clown, immature and slacking off until he finally graduated. Over the course of Naruto, little by little he began maturing until he eventually became one of the strongest shinobi that the ninja world had ever seen, and finally became the Hokage. That doesn't mean Naruto has completely grown up. Even at the most mature points in his life, Naruto retains some of that goofy and childish attitude that he's had since the beginning. Despite being a father of two now, Naruto can still be just as immature as his own kids. 2. Luffy clearly sees maturity as optional. One Piece. Since the very start of One Piece, Luffy has had the excitement and upbeat energy of a child. The up-and-coming king of the pirates really only has two things on his mind. That being food and adventure. His naivety, lack of manners, and hyperactive attitude get him and his crew into trouble sometimes too, to the point where it's hard to believe he's supposed to be the captain. Despite reaching notoriety as a wanted pirate and through some rough defeats and personal tragedies, Luffy has gotten stronger on the outside, but on the inside, has mostly remained the same child at heart that he's always been. 1. Bobobo is basically a kid in a muscular adult body. Bobobo. Maturity comes more easily to some than others, though even some who act immaturely have some maturity hidden deep down somewhere. However, for Bobobo, it's hard to imagine him as anything but wildly immature. The protagonist of the hilariously random Bobobo is basically just a kid in a giant muscular adult body. He may look intense at times, but that never lasts more than a few seconds, as he uses his superpowered nose hairs, his knack for using his allies as human shields, and all the immature randomness he can think up to defeat his foes. His childish behavior might as well be a superpower of its own.